Chapter 28. Aurora's Nightmare. Aurora felt like she was going mad. The sisters' laughter reverberated through her chamber, causing the images in the mirrors to tremble. It was like being trapped in a small room filled with too many people, all talking at her at once. It was a loud cacophony of voices, punctuated by the odd sister's hysterical laughter. In one of the mirrors she could see her cousin Tulip talking with a giant tree. He was so large that he towered over the highest pinnacle of her castle. In another she saw herself walking down a long passageway surrounded by an eerie green light. There was something wrong with her eyes. She looked enchanted, almost like she was asleep. She was being directed toward a spinning wheel. Aurora watched as she touched the spindle and fell to the ground. The sound of a mad woman's laughter filled the air. In yet another mirror, Aurora saw her beloved prince being ambushed by a group of boar-like creatures. The foul beasts were armed with long pointed spears. They had terrible tusks and looked like they came from the very bowels of Hades itself. In a fourth mirror, Aurora saw Maleficent as a young woman, crying. Someone named the fairy godmother was telling her it was her destiny to be evil. The younger Maleficent didn't seem evil to Aurora. She appeared smart, loving, and ambitious, but not evil. In another mirror, Aurora saw younger versions of the three good fairies putting a raven in a cage, while in another still she saw the fairies fighting over the color of a dress they had made for her. Elsewhere, she saw Maleficent speaking to an old woman with silver hair, begging for the woman's help with a spell so that Aurora would never wake. The images wouldn't stop. They just kept flashing before her eyes, sometimes too fast for her to understand what was happening. The voices were all speaking at once in a deafening clamor. Aurora saw a young man in a sky blue velvet jacket with ribbons pacing back and forth in a garden, practicing the words, "I love you, Tulip. Will you marry me?" over and over. All the scenes were running over each other and creating the most unbearable noise. "Stop!" Aurora finally yelled. For a moment everything went still. Then, just as suddenly, the mirrors turned black. The mirror chamber was eerily quiet, almost too quiet after all the noise. "Show me my christening," she said, and watched as the scene appeared in a mirror. Maleficent was standing in her mother and father's court. She looked hauntingly beautiful in her long black and purple robes. Her horns and head were covered in a tight black cowl, creating a menacing effect. This fairy seemed like a completely different person from the teenage Maleficent Aurora had seen in the other mirror. She embodied the spirit of evil. As the dark fairy addressed the court, acknowledging everyone assembled, Aurora could tell Maleficent was angry and hurt. Even though she was stoic and spoke in a pleasant voice, her words were bitter and dripping with despair. "I really feel quite distressed at not receiving an invitation," she said. It was made clear to the dark fairy that it wasn't a mistake that she hadn't been invited. "You weren't wanted," Merryweather shouted, trying to charge at the dark fairy with her wand drawn. Her friends Flora and Fauna struggled to keep her back. "Not wanted? Ah! Oh dear, what an awkward situation. I had hoped it was merely due to some oversight," the dark fairy said, stroking her raven Diablo with a slight smile. "Well, in that event, I'd best be on my way." "And you're not offended, your Excellency?" asked Queen Leah. "Why, no, your Majesty, and to show I bear no ill will, I, too, shall bestow a gift on the child. Listen well, all of you," the terrible fairy commanded as she slammed the end of her staff against the stone floor. "The princess shall indeed grow in grace and beauty, beloved by all who know her. But before the sun sets on her 16th birthday, she shall prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die." The odd sisters' laughter echoed through the chamber again. They were laughing so loudly the mirrors in the chamber were threatening to break. Why do you think the dark fairy cared whether or not she was invited to a stupid christening? Why would she have ventured out into the world, something she loathed doing, something she tried to avoid at all costs? What could possibly compel her to do so? Aurora shook her head. "I don't know. It doesn't make sense." "Our dear sweet girl, it makes all the sense in the world if you know where to look. There are so many invested in your well-being. Even the dark fairy holds you in what's left of her heart. She thinks she's lost everything the day you were born, but that isn't true. If she didn't still have some part of her old self within her, she wouldn't want to protect you. She tried to kill me, the princess cried. She tried to kill you for your own protection. It's degenerative, our dear sweet Rose. Don't you see? We took almost everything that day, but she held on to what was left. She held on to that tiny shining light within her heart, the sisters said with sad smiles as they looked down at the confused princess. Please stop talking nonsense, Aurora shouted. That doesn't make sense. Oh, it will, my darling, it will. We will explain and show you the truth of your curse. On one condition. First, show us our sister.